You know, we're right about 182nd Street in Vermont. Now, Ascot was on Vermont, and I remember my father bringing me over here to Ascot Park from another racetrack, which was just up the street here on Normandy. And that track was named Carroll Speedway. Carroll Speedway was another half-mile dirt track, but it happened to be on the land where Gardena High School was expanding. So basically, Gardena High School and some of the housing track behind it took Carroll Speedway away, and Normandy went right by where the grandstands were, and for many years you could see the grandstands sitting there. But my father brought me from Carroll Speedway, a classic racetrack, to Ascot in '57 when it was just being built. And he took me upstairs, and we stood on the pavement there, and we looked out, and we noticed that it was a half-mile dirt oval, like we had over here at Gardena Stadium. And my father said, hey, you know, there's going to be a tremendous racetrack here in the near future, and it's going to be a great place to race. And he was right. The only thing I didn't know, that though the racetrack was starting in 1957, I didn't realize that it would be ending in 1990. And I had no idea that that would be the future of the racetrack.
Why did the racetrack end?
You know, for many years, we had a long-term contract with Maxwell Ziegler. Max lived in Gardena here, and we would ask Max repeatedly, and Maxwell, Mr. Ziegler had lots of property. Let me see, I believe it was an 18-acre parcel that Ascot was, and I'll have to check on that for you, but Max didn't want to sell that property, and JC asked him many times over and over again if he could buy it. And Max said, well, maybe somewhere down the line, JC, I'll sell you this property. Well, eventually, Mr. Ziegler passed away. And after he passed away, his wife Lillian, who I don't know if she was a real businessman, but the people that built the building at 190th and Vermont, the developers there came to her and said, you know, we'd like to build a big building on the Ascot Park property. And she said, oh, you would? And they said, yeah, in fact, we'll give you a long-term lease, we'll purchase the property, we'll pay you monthly, a ton of money, and you should just tell the Ascot people to just go away. Now, Lillian, in her first business deal after her husband passed away, made the decision, with the help of a realtor in Gardena, a realtor that had been here a long time, that had her confidence, a redheaded lady, I won't mention any names, she helped talk Lillian into doing this development. Lillian came to us as our lease ran out, and we were ready to either purchase the property from her, as we've continued to try to do, or we were going to extend our lease and continue racing at Ascot. And Lillian said, oh, no, you can't do that. You boys have been there long enough. You know, it's time for someone else to be there. Like, you've been sitting in the sandbox playing, let's have some other kids play in the sandbox. Well, we were beside ourselves, because Ascot wasn't just a racetrack. There were numerous other businesses, sub-businesses that were dependent on Ascot, businesses that had to do with tires, with fueling, with building of chassis, just a number of businesses, peripheral businesses that only ran because Ascot was there. When Lillian made her off-the-cuff decision to not renew our lease and to give this property to a developer, she ended Ascot, essentially. Now, I don't often tell this story, but she's been gone long enough to go ahead and say what a very poor decision she made. That's my opinion, and I'm welcome to it, but it was indeed a very poor decision, because that property was never developed. There was never a building built on it. It was on landfill. Half the property was landfill. It used to be a dump. There was no way that a building of 20 or 30 stories could ever be on that property. Everyone knew that. It was too expensive to sink pylons into the ground to try and support these big buildings that they were promising her. But she didn't look that far. She didn't see that far. She instead decided to end an institution, a nationally known and loved institution. It was her decision. It was their property. We tried to buy it. We were unable to do that, and the rest is history. They asked us to leave. The grandstands were sold to other racetracks. The lighting were sold to other racetracks. All of the property was cleared, and as we handed it over to her and vacated, the developer that came in knew then that he was not going to be able to develop. And in fact, the development on 190th and Vermont was starting to go downhill from there at that time. The economy was going down. The area was overdeveloped, and I don't know what he was thinking, but that developer went out of business. Mrs. Ziegler, who was promised these hundreds of thousands of dollars monthly, that never materialized. Both of them were out of business, and Ascot was closed. And if I sound bitter, it's because I am.
Okay.
Is that what you wanted to know?
Yeah.
You got it. I don't often tell that story. Let's go inside.